Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Walter's Tours podcast, where we talk everything tourism, travel, and adventure. And today we've got one of my favourite Novocastrians, Gavin Morris. Gavin Morris is an amazing adventurer. Gavin Morris is our present NBN News weather presenter. He has been presenting on national news certainly more than once a week, to my knowledge. You've been a radio DJ. You've been a reporter for ESPN. You've lived abroad. You've studied in New York acting. You're one of my favourite adventurers because you do insane things like paragliding. I think you're the very first Australian to do tandem jump off Mount Kilimanjaro. Have I left anything out, Gavin?
There's a few things in there, yeah. Sailing halfway around the world in a 100-year-old square rigger, which was fantastic. And, just toured all through Europe when I was young and left home fairly young at a young age and, began... my love of the mountains, I guess, here in Australia.
How old were you when you left home?
Well, I was 17. I had my first job in radio here in Newcastle, and I was studying radio at school at night, and I got out of there, but I really wanted to be a DJ. So the only way to do that, is to go to a country town, and my first country town was Cooma, and not too far down the road was Thredbo. Perisher, and
that's right. And you were, to my knowledge, become a reporter in Thredbo. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I returned there in 1990, and then again in 1993, and led the media team. So I had this affinity to it straight away, and also it was the first time that I ever did paragliding in 1990 as well. So it was my first tandem in Thredbo too.
How did you get started in paragliding? How did you do that?
Well, what happened? It's kind of like a big story, really. But I'll keep it as refined as possible.
We've got the time if you want it. I've heard some amazing stories of what you've done paragliding.
Yeah, well, it was the very first time in 1990, and I went down there. I need a little bit of a break from media, believe it or not. I'd been a DJ and travelled around somewhat, and I just wanted something different. So I went to Thredbo to apply for a job, and I got a job in the information hut, and it was a really cruisy job. We got teased a lot down there because we're not shuffling snow, we're not working tea.
Hang on, you were part of that. You were working in the tourist information office.
I certainly was. Yeah.
What were you doing there?
Well, most of the time, just telling people where the toilet was. And
the Wi-Fi password was Wi-Fi then.
There was no Wi-Fi in 1990, my friend.
Right. Where's the ATM machine as well? That's a most common one.
ATM machine. Yeah. We gave cash out then in the ticket office. So it was mostly about the mountain and where to go and the lifts, etc. But then they found out that I had a radio background. So I then stepped up as part-time snow reporter. I was filling in then for Adam. Adam was the main snow reporter. So on his days off, I started filling in 1990. And, we did all sorts of really, really cool things. We went flying. We shot this great documentary, actually. We helped Channel 10. They shot this amazing documentary in 1990 because it was an incredible year. It was one of the best snow years in Australia's history. 1981 was the biggest, but 1990 was solid. It was really, really good. So we shot this incredible documentary, and the Channel 10 chopper was there. And one of the really cool first things I ever did, the Channel 10 chopper pilot, I think he was served in Vietnam. He was very, very good. But he took us up on the plateau, and one of the coolest things, the first time I ever saw Kosciuszko was upside down in a helicopter. He's just screaming along the plateau, and then he's gone up and over Kosciuszko, and I'm just looking out going, no way. And there's people like camping on the side of Kosci in the snow, and this
trying to take in the ambiance and everything outside adventures.
Exactly. And then straight across the plateau and then it just drops down into Thredbo Valley and just drops straight down into the valley. And then
so you're not your typical weatherman, so to speak. You're the adventure style weather reporter.
Yeah, and then there was Heinz there, and it was like right at the beginning of paragliding here in this country, and Heinz Galore was doing it. He was doing tandems, and knowing what we know now, they don't have it there anymore because there's just too much turbulence in the valley, and you've got the chairlift cables, and it's quite hard to get it exactly right. There was quite a lot of accidents back then. There was guys landing down on the golf course. That's where we landed, and there was a lot of turbulence. and guys breaking their legs because their legs were going into rabbit holes, etc. And
right.
back then also, when they were learning out in the backcountry, they were like launching off mountains. And there's this famous story because the whole idea of it now, knowing what we do, is ride the thermals from cloud to cloud. You ride the warm.
What is that? Can you explain? What is that, ride the thermals?
Well, you launch off a mountain, or anyway, you can tow up these days as well. And the objective is to fly as far as you can using nothing but the sun's energy and the wind.
Okay.
So, say this is a cloud and that's a cloud. Underneath every single cloud, there's a rising column of air. It's warm air. And then it reaches dew point, it condenses, and then you get to see it. And that's a cumulus cloud. So you're in your paraglider and you're looking for that rising column of air. And you're in it, and then you circle up and you get the cloud base. And then you go to the next cloud. But in between the clouds, it's sinking air. So the objective is to go to cloud to cloud to cloud and just keep going as far as you can. So, 100, 200. Now the record is over 500, 600 kilometers for paragliders. And they've been breaking all sorts of records in Brazil at the moment.
Sure.
Just, because conditions are optimum. But when they were training back in those days, there's a famous story of like...
What is those? When did all this happen? When were you doing that around that area? Paraglide. What year was this happening?
That was 1990.
Wow.
Yeah, so back then. So that was right at the beginning. But I went back and trained because I did it again in 1994 at Interlaken in Switzerland.
Yeah.
And then I saw the mountains and the lakes and the Austrian Alps. I mean, well, you could see Austria, you could see Switzerland, you could see everything.
Bit of Italy almost in the distance, yeah.
It was just phenomenal, and it just blew me away. And I always thought, wow, this is going to be something that I want to do. But the opportunity to do that was going to come many, many years later.
I'm a massive fan of Switzerland, in particular Interlaken, because when I used to go out Europe, we used to stay there for 2 nights.
Yeah.
And used to go up the very top of Jungfrau, and every single time I could see people paragliding in and landing around those periods.
The Matterhorn, that
valley,
oh man,
it's
phenomenal.
It's like one of the most adventure capitals part of the planet.
Yeah.
Where what's those wingsuits, like the Red Bull style?
Yeah,
see them like I just remember catching a train, then you see straight like it was so yeah. You paraglided around one of the most beautiful parts of the planet multiple times.
Yeah, look, when I was there, I remember going up to the Jungfrau region, Grindelwald, and I remember writing in my diary when I was traveling, I thought, if God lived anywhere on the planet, chances are he would make this his home. It was so spectacular.
I thought that would have been Cessnock in my opinion.
Well, I spent some time in Cessnock. My dad's from Cessnock. And, so, I have an affinity with Cessnock. And it's got Mount View, and it's one of the most spectacular views.
Actually, that it is. It is around the Hunter Valley.
It is.
Yeah, so I mean, you've done a lot of paragliding. So you had a big break. What caused that break from when you were doing it early 90s and you did it in 99? You had a break. What happened in there?
Well, I was traveling the world then. So, in 1994, I bought a one-way ticket to Prague. And I just went on my adventures. So that's why that happened during that tour. So, I'd finished the ski season. That's right. So I'd finished the ski season in 1993, and then I came back to Triple M in Sydney because I'd spent a lot of time at Triple M during the late 80s. So I was there as a cart boy, as I was. My very first job that happened here in Newcastle at 2NX was a cart boy in the production area. So I was producing the best of Doug Mulray on a Saturday. Dougie just got inducted into the Hall of Fame at the last Radio Awards, which was awesome to see.
Which celebrities? Doug Mulray. Was there anyone else that you're working? Because Triple M's a massive radio station in Sydney.
Well, we had Andrew Denton then. He was Andrew the Boy Wonder, that came in, and he was Doggie's offsider and just an absolute genius. So I was sitting next to them in the studio, and this is where being a cart boy was an incredible foundation because we were just so close to everything. We were close to the announcers, we were close to the sales team, we were close to production. You got to see how the whole radio station came together because I was the last link on the chain. So I was transferring the commercials from the reel to reel onto the cart, which is a loop, and then you had to put a pulse onto the back end of it, and the commercials would fire off one after the other. So my nickname back then was Pulse. But I was sitting there watching the best DJs in the country at the time.
Learning the craft.
Learning the craft and watching how they worked and what they did. And, watching that Doug Mulray breakfast team was phenomenal. And, Rob Duckworth in the afternoon and Stuart Craney in the mornings. I mean, they were just phenomenal operators. And we had the best, voiceover guys. Then Steve Britton, who Steve still does, the voiceovers for Channel 9, and Mike Drayson, one of the biggest voices.
The
in
voiceover,
the country.
is that the Welcome to Nine?
Yeah,
is
exactly.
That's it. That guy?
Yeah, that's Steve, the big one.
Okay.
Yeah, so, they were really phenomenal times. Triple M in the late 80s was incredible because I saw the transfer from Rod Muir. Rod Muir created this FM radio phenomenon in this country, and then he sold it. But he sold it to Glenn Wheatley, and he didn't want it to go to a big corporation. And anyway, Glenn had done a deal with the Fink family, which was Hoyts, I think, at the time, and he turned it over. So he bought it for $90 million, and he didn't let anyone know about it, but he pretty much on-sold it for about 100. I think he pocketed something like $20-30 million within a fortnight.
Wow.
But Rod wasn't happy about it. So on the transfer, when we were all in the boardroom, there's this very famous story, and I actually got the photos of it not long ago on Facebook. They shared it. So Rod was given a chainsaw, and the boardroom was this incredible redwood, this one piece of wood, and to show his disdain for what had occurred after the check was passed over, he's kickstarted the chainsaw in front of the whole staff and chainsawed the boardroom table. It was like the party days back, and like what we did every single Friday night.
What possesses one to get a chainsaw and do that?
To show and express that he was not happy with what had occurred, because he wanted to look after his radio family. He had to move on. It's one of those things with shareholders, it all means nothing unless you sell it. And there's everybody,
the blood, the sweat, the tears that's been put into it.
Yeah, and there were so many people that invested into that radio station. Rod was running out of money, and they were like going, hey, look, I've got 10 grand. People were giving him their savings to keep the radio station alive. That's how much of a family entity it was. And that night at the pub in Balmain was phenomenal, because then that main check got broken up, and then Rod stood up on a seat in the back of the pub, and again I was there as a witness, like young kid watching this unfold before me. But it was like, Ben, like 3 years ago, man, I was down, I was broke, you came, you gave me $25,000, to help me keep alive. He's gone, there's your check, $1.7 million, so everybody was getting their checks that night, and it was just incredible to see.
I love your energy and your interpretation, because other people might be in that situation and they're totally shocked. Yeah. That sounds like, to turn up with the chainsaw, it's like, and you're loving it.
Well, it was an incredible place to be as a young, I guess, up and coming, media person. I just wanted. You
can really thrive in that very super exciting sort of ecosystem.
Yeah, absolutely. Provided. Yeah, and I was just inspired. I wanted to be a part of it. I had a lot of talent in the production side of things, and they really wanted me to go down that path. But I wanted to be a DJ, and I would do anything.
How did you get your shot? How did you become that? So you were learning on the behind the scenes at Triple M.
Yep.
Witnessed crazy things like that, which
and then doing
how did you make the real shift to the radio DJ?
Well, doing mid-dawns, it happened here at 2NX, because what happened, how I got into it, it's another story as well. I had this politician that came to my school, and he wanted to talk to all of the kids, and so this is kind of how it all began. First of all, the step before, let's go back to the beginning.
The media personality crack was this moment.
Well, yeah, well, it was more my mum, because I got kicked out of school for talking so much, and my mum was like, what am I going to do with this kid, so she heard on the radio there was an ad for radio school, so I went and applied for the radio school when I was really young. I was like 15 or something, and they thought I was older at the time. And anyway, I got in, so I was doing radio school. And then this politician came to our school, and he wanted to talk to all of the grade 1 students about their thoughts on the future. And back then it was a big time for Newcastle here with BHP, and we knew that it was going to come to an end.
Super huge moment.
Yeah, and it was jobs and careers. And back then it was all about getting a trade or an apprenticeship, and we just didn't know what was going to occur. So this politician wanted to talk to the youth about their thoughts on the future, and I was quite outspoken. I was outspoken on environmental issues, and my thoughts on our future as young men coming up in the world. And he took a bit of a liking to me. I didn't realize at the time, but anyway, we all exited, and he said, "Gavin, you got a second? Come back." And he said, "What do you want to do?" And Oh, I was just
So you had that moment.
pulling words out of my butt, and I just said, I want to be heard, you know. And he went, what do you mean? I was just making up. And at that point, I was doing radio school, so he knew John McGann then, the
So
general
you
manager.
were one of those problem childs,
Yeah.
or the outspoken childs where like you're not doing your homework, sit in your seat, do your homework. Like, no, I want to be crazy. I want to do all these exciting things. So, to all the kids who might be listening, what's a message to that?
Look, I've gone to a lot of schools, and you
Yeah.
have to believe in you, and you don't really know where your future and your career lies. It could be within your passion. And today is a very exciting world. You can be a great skateboarder, and if you're going to commit to it and go hard, you've got to be in the top 1%.
Yeah,
But you can make a living out of it. You know, you can make a living out of being a surfer, a guitarist, whatever now.
Really follow your passion to that next level.
100%.
I love the example of all the kids that were playing Nintendo for hours on end. What's that going to do? It's going to rot your brain. You're wasting your time. There's professional gamers now crushing it.
I know. He made a fortune. What was it? He was like the highest paid, the one that just won, and it was like $14 million or something. Insane. But it's the very top.
Yeah. It could be done. The point is, it could be done.
Yeah.
There is things outside of sitting down in a school classroom and
absolutely
just learning mathematics and science and English, and
yep.
There's so many, and you are a living, breathing example of that. Because when I look down your resume and your experiences, what do you think if you would have followed the traditional schooling path, it would have got to where you're at now?
No, definitely not. No, I mean, and I was really, really lucky that my parents trusted me in my decisions, you know, because you know, I'd met that politician, Senator Peter Boehm, and then John McGann had offered me a job before school, and then I had a professional or potential professional soccer career to possibly take on as well. And my parents let me make the decision over a summer. And, you know, sitting in the car coming home from summer holidays, they said, well, what are you going to do? And they thought that I would go for the soccer career. And I said, I'm going to do the radio thing. And they're like, why? And I went, well, the way I see it is like I can be old, fat and bald and I can still do radio, but the soccer career isn't probably not going to last very long, you know? And they went, fair enough.
You've got a plan. This kid's got a plan.
Got a plan, exactly. So I opted for the radio and media, and 35 odd years now I've been in it.
Well, let's really analyze your plan here, because you've gone from a radio DJ. Oh, there's so much to your story. It's mind-blowing. Radio DJ to become a to Triple M.
Yep.
No, sorry, it's Newcastle to Triple M to Thredbo. And then you really started to learn some weather conditions and that paragliding. So there's adventure and media like sort of going hand in hand. Did you like do both at the same time? Like, I mean, being a media personality when you got the cameras on you, or public speaking in general, scares the crap out of people.
Yeah.
So, and there's pressure involved. Like, do you ever use adventure to sort of balance out, to counteract that? Or like paragliding to go, oh man, that was an intense interview, or that was an intense report, I want to go paragliding to sort of balance it out, like the yin and the yang.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah. Paragliding, I returned home, you know, to Newcastle after traveling the world for a very, very long time and 7 years in New York, etc. And I wanted adventure in my life. And I remembered that I had done it, you know, at Interlaken, and always thought, yeah, you know, I want to come back to that. And, you know, once I'd settled down here and became a family man, you know, I wanted to balance, you know, because this is the thing, what you go and find about me, you know, is I have a common theme. For me, everything is about balance. And I don't think you can find true success in life, personally, professionally, without true balance. And so I needed to satisfy that hunger inside of me as far as adventure is concerned. And paragliding was the next level for me. Because if you want to go all the way back, because during school also, not only was I doing radio, but those summer holidays that I was talking about, I was surfing, but I didn't grow up on the coast. I grew up inland. So I was traveling down to the coast, and I was realizing the weather was a lot different. You know, I'd be up the valley, it's hot, it's westerlies. I get down here, a southerlies blowing through. I've wasted my money on the train going, I need to learn the weather. So I started reading newspapers aloud for my radio school, but I was also reading synoptic chart. And so that's where the weather bug began at school. And then I actually got jobs as fill-in surf reporters, and obviously the snow reporter, which we've talked about, and then sailing around the world on that 100-year-old.
So you've been exposed to various weather conditions to be able to read, it's talking about the west. I mean, Australia's one of the driest, hottest continents on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go to somewhere like Interlaken where there's like 4,000 meter peaks with snow, like constantly all year round up the very top. So you're really able to decipher and interpret all these different types of weather conditions around the world.
Yeah. Well, when I was at sea, I thought I was just going to learn like the top 12 clouds. And then I realized there's over 100, and so I started memorizing the clouds,
So hang on, because you mentioned before you had 7 years in New York, just boom, I just snuck that one in there. But how did you go from Triple M or Threadbow and find your way up into New York? Because you said you bought a one-way ticket to Prague. Was there something connected around that, I believe?
Yeah, well, what happened is at the end of 93, the ski season was over, and then I came back to Triple M and I did a promotion with them called Gold Rush Gav. So I spent the summer 7 days a week. It was like about 10, 12 weeks straight, right through the summer, worked every single day. And I had to go and hire these beautiful, Triple M FM 105 gold coins, and they were worth $105. So I drove all around Sydney in the car, morning, lunchtime, afternoon, and I'd give clues, and I'd sit in the car and put it in a fountain or put it in a park somewhere and wait for people. It was like a treasure hunt. It was a massive treasure hunt.
I got things stashed all around here for the Gold Rush Gap to come back.
Yeah, it was a great promotion. It really worked well. It was a cracker.
Yeah.
But at the end of that, I'd saved up quite a lot of money, and I'd worked in the ski resort for 93, and I had like an entertainment budget. So not only was then I leader of the media team the second time around in 93, they pretty much paid for everything. They paid for my accommodation, and so I had most of my money was just going into a bank account. So I was saving a lot of money, and then it was the same. I was working so hard when I was back in Sydney. I was saving a lot of money, and at one of them, I went to this big travel expo, and Debbie, my boss from 1990, was in there. She was a travel agent now, and I said, we sat down and had a chat. She said, "What do you want?" I said, "I think I want to go overseas. I think." She's gone, "Let's do it now!" Like, and we banged out Eurail pass, organised my passport, bought this one-way ticket.
At the time, how long were you thinking this journey was going to go?
I didn't know.
Could have been 2 weeks, 2 years,
and that's
20,
why I bought a one-way ticket.
No idea.
I just went, no, if I buy a return, I'm going to be bound by it. I wanted freedom.
At the time, so you said you had a paying job that paid for your accommodation.
Yeah.
You're saving a lot of money. So you're on a really good wicket.
Yeah.
And you're still wanting to go.
Yeah. It was just that burning desire. And I was asking friends, anybody, come with me.
What age were you when you were doing this?
Well, this was now 1994. So that's right, 25. So because I was starting to cross over into television as well, I had a TV show that was after that stint that was waiting to go. It was a pilot, and it then didn't go. And I really wanted to be in TV by the time I was 25. And I just kind of had this pact in my head, like, well, if it doesn't happen, I'm going.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So I literally walked out of that expo going, whoa, I've now got a one-way ticket to Prague, Eurail pass, visas, everything all organized, going, okay, game on.
Your manager or boss at the time, you would have had to have resigned. What happened there? Because they were like, Gav, you're 25, you got a career happening, you got money coming in. Like, that must have been a tough decision. Like, I've met so many people whilst traveling abroad. They're there for various reasons.
Yeah.
They could be going through a breakup. They're trying to find themselves. They're not really sure about things. They could be escaping something. You're like, I want travel.
Yeah,
like, that's
exactly.
an incredible story. Like, is that how you explain it to your boss? And they're looking at you like, what are you doing? What? Or were they happy, supportive?
Yeah. Supportive. There was no one ever that held me back. I mean, my mum was always scared and worried. She'd never.
As they do.
She couldn't relate to this at all. But that was the only person. Everyone was like, go for it.
Yeah.
And phenomenal, to do that as well. Not go with a 2-month or 3-month stint in mind. Just open yourself to the universe. And I had a little talk to a friend at work yesterday that is going through this. And I just said, when we are in our worlds, when we are locked in relationships or the day-to-day routine or home, family life, all of that kind of stuff, you're locked off from the opportunities of the universe.
Oh, yeah.
And it's throwing things at you all of the time, but you're almost got this protective force field around you, and it's bouncing them all
You
away.
got the blinkers on.
You don't even see them.
Yeah.
But when you release everything, and it's very, very scary, it's a frightening thing to do, But particularly when you go by yourself. If you're going with a girlfriend, you're going with a boyfriend, you're going with a partner, or just a friend in general, or a family member, you're still going to be locked off to the possibilities that the universe will throw at you.
Depends on your traveler. I've done exactly that multiple times. I've traveled by myself.
Yeah.
I've traveled with girlfriends. I've traveled with mates. Been passenger tours and been the tour guide. All of which have different experiences. And I do agree with what you're saying. When you're traveling by yourself, it just allows you. You have to. You're forced to go into the unknown of like, I need to talk to that person.
Yep.
Someone goes, hey, do you want to do this? Chances are you're going to say yes instead of no.
Yes.
And where that can lead to.
Exactly, is the world of possibilities.
Yeah.
And you're looking for it, you need it, and you need to rely on you. You know, you have to open up, you have to engage, you have to take the possibilities. Hence how I ended up being on the ship after I traveled all around Europe and I met, incredible friends. I had that first week in Prague, and that was just after the Velvet Revolution. I got off the plane and, there was guys with, machine guns. I'd never seen anything like that, and, there was an Asian guy with a suitcase in front of me and these guys with machine guns just came over, grabbed him and took him away in front of me. I'm like, whoa, I'm
so
not
this is
anymore.
just after the Iron Curtains come down?
It was, 4 years just after. So it was very,
very
fresh.
Big time.
Very fresh in Prague. I mean, it was the beginning of the Westerners. They were coming in. We were very new. We were novelties, at that point, and tourism, it was like Charles Bridge isn't anything like it is right now. And, I've seen photos of Prague now and like, whoa. And it was so cheap then too. It was just, my budget was 20 Australian dollars a day and I was living like a king.
At the time, I guess many people wouldn't have spoken English as fluently as well.
100%. No, not
and Czech's
at
a
all.
really,
not at all.
really, really challenging language to pick up. Like if you read French, I can't speak French or German or Spanish. English pronunciation can someone pick it up. When you go to Czech, you look at the words, you're like, it could be Korean, and it makes as much sense.
Yeah, and I was
you're in the deep end, right?
I did go deep end, and then after spending a week there, but it was the only part of the world that I knew somebody, Donna in Dallas, who I went with and visited. But then, after I'd been there for like 8-9 days, I had to engage my Eurail pass. So once I started, that was it. It was game on. Then I had 3 months to travel. And my first trip was on the overnight train to Vienna. And once I got to Vienna, first thing in the morning at dawn, I was frightened. I was like, whoa, what? I didn't even know what to do.
How was Vienna in that stage? Because nowadays Vienna is one of the most livable cities in the world. There's two cities, there's Vancouver, Melbourne, and Vienna as the most livable cities in the world. Like they rate this on, let me see, like education, low crime, opportunity, public transportation. It's general standards of living.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, Vienna's right up there. How was it then?
Oh, stunning. I mean, coming out of, Prague, Prague's visually spectacular,
yes.
but, I'm jumping from the east to the west to a degree,
Yep.
So it was a lot more comfortable, but I just didn't know what to do. So I was on the steps. I was stuck at the train station. I was so frightened to move because, of the language barrier and looking at the streets. I just couldn't even figure it out. But I saw two other guys who ended up becoming my closest friends and still are to this day. They had a bigger map than me, so so we ended up becoming friends, and then we traveled together. And we just had an absolute ball, and then it just kicked in for me. And then I got the group because they'd already been traveling, and then I was like observing how they were doing it, and then I got it. Okay, so before each location, you do your research, you figure out where you're going.
How do you research? Nowadays, it's on TripAdvisor, it's on Google, it's on Tour Radar, it's on Viator.
We had
it's all online. How do you
travel
books?
Yeah, and it was just you just go through the travel book in each location, and they'd have a youth.
So Lonely Planet.
Yeah, Lonely Planet was one of them. Frommers was another one, a big one. Yeah. There was another one. I think I had the Frommers book and I had Lonely Planet. So you use the two and you just highlight, the things that you wanted to see in each city, the possibility of youth hostels and the phone number, and you just, you'd get the coins and then you'd go to the phone and say, ring up, yep, and then they'd go, catch tram number so-and-so, so-and-so, and then come to door, the orange
Those travel days are gone, aren't they? Get your phone out and that experience.
Very different.
I was lucky I had some of that because I was traveling very much similar where I didn't have the phone.
Yeah.
So I'm so blessed and fortunate I've had those travel experiences.
Yeah, well, most of the time we just show up. You wouldn't even ring. You just go, and if they will go, look, we're full, but then they go, hey, look, there's another one down the road, or here's the instructions to go to the next one.
Yeah.
And you'd get a bed.
There's always a way.
Yeah.
There's always a way. So where did you go? So you're in Vienna, and then how did you, because we were trying to get onto New York. So you went to Prague, you bought one-way ticket, and
Yeah.
like, were you thinking you were going to be in New York for 7 years at this period?
Well, ironically, Joe and Lance, who I travelled with then, they were from New York. They were from Jersey, actually. And I said, I'll see you in a year's time when we parted. And it was a sad departure because they were going to Greece and we parted in Italy. And then I was meeting some girls from Newcastle here, and we were going to meet in Venice. So I was going off to meet them on the date and the time underneath the larger statue. That's how we met in those days. It was just a time and a date and a guess of a location.
Commit.
Yeah, and commit. And
there's no Facebook message. See you in 15 minutes.
Nah.
You'd be there.
We showed up, and I still remember it was 2 p.m. July 22. Was it 1994? And we did. We showed up underneath that line, San Marco Square, and amazingly we found each other. And so then we traveled together, and then I just zigzagged all over Europe, and then back up to Scandinavia, Copenhagen, and then back down through Berlin, and then all the way down through Spain to Portugal, crossed over into Africa for a while, and then back up, then went down the Danube, and then back to Amsterdam, and then I was meeting.
Whoa! What'd you do in Amsterdam? Come on, everyone's got a story.
What happens in Amsterdam stays in Amsterdam. Right. We all know that law. It was a good time. That's all we got to say about that. As all of us have a good time in Amsterdam. But it was awesome back in those days. I mean, probably, I don't know, I haven't been back now, but I'm sure it's good. But it was phenomenal. It was just a lot of fun, and the place that I stayed was incredible. I met all these wild English guys. It was just mad. It was just
still like that.
Yeah.
I used to actually do walking tours in Amsterdam. I used to do red light district walking tours, and it is. There's so much to Amsterdam outside that.
And
it's
it's
famous
classy.
to it. It's like it's famous for a red light district. It's famous for the marijuana. It's famous for the prostitution laws. You just go outside. It's like, what an amazing city. Yeah.
And the Heineken brewery tour that everyone's did, because you paid like a couple of bucks and you drank as much as you could at the end of the tour. Then sit out in the garden afterwards and do what you do in Amsterdam.
Oh, yeah. It's a hot spot, as same for the British guys to come over and have their stag do's last like a week.
Yep.
Oh, it's always loose. But yeah, so you travel around, and then I've got to ask this question. Did you ever want to be a tour guide by any chance?
Well,
ever crossed your mind?
It'd be fun, that's for sure. I haven't really thought of that profession,
it's
but
a good gig.
It sounds like a good gig. I reckon it would be too. I wouldn't mind doing that at all. Adventure. If I could live.
That's ultimately what it is. You paid.
Yeah.
Managing people and ultimately managing adventure. But so in Amsterdam, did you know you're going to go to New York, or did you think at this period while you're traveling, I want to keep traveling, or I want to get back into media. I want to go next level in that career, because you have achieved certainly tremendous amounts of next level.
Exactly. Well, my game plan, because I only had the one-way ticket, was just move west. Just keep going, west. And I just thought, well, eventually I'm going to get around the globe and I'll get back here somehow. So
that's a good plan.
That was the game plan. Yeah. So just constantly move west. So. I went to England, and then I was supposed to engage my visa and work, do the typical Aussie thing, work for 12 months, 2 years in England, and travel backwards and forwards more to Europe.
How old were you at this stage? Because you were about 25 when you left?
Yeah, 25. Still 25 because, I think I had my 26 when I was crossing the Atlantic on the ship. So
yeah.
So what happened then, I was going to work, but I just couldn't handle it. I'd been 2 weeks in London. I hadn't seen the sun. I'd just been on an absolute high, of traveling for 4 months straight. And I'm supposed to settle down in England now, and I couldn't do it. And anyway, some Aussies that I met in Portugal, they were living in Edinburgh. So I was supposed to go to work that day, and I just couldn't. So I stopped at the phone booth and rang them up, and they said, yeah, come and crash on our lounge. And I went, cool. And then I rang up the work after working one day and said, oh, look, I'm not coming into work today. And they went, oh, right, okay, no worries. We'll see you tomorrow. I went, no, actually, I'm not coming in tomorrow.
The next.
Yeah, I've got a job in Scotland. I'm going to Scotland. They went, oh, okay, cool. Good luck. We'll send you your check for the date. I went, don't worry about it. Hang on to it. So then I took off and I went to Edinburgh, and I thought, well, I need to get around. Scotland's not an easy place to get around because there's no trains. The Eurail Pass was over. You could get that bus from youth hostel to youth hostel, but it wasn't the style. So I sat on the steps of a youth hostel, and I just asked anybody that was coming up to the youth hostel if they wanted to go halves in a hire car. And I met this guy, and he was American from San Francisco Bay, and he lived on a yacht. And so the very first drive from Edinburgh over to Oban, which is just on the Mull of Kintyre on the west coast, We went straight there, and stunning, beautiful village. I mean, it's just beautiful. It was just so gorgeous. And, we were there. And then at the end of the wharf, I came across the most magnificent ship I've ever seen in my life. And tall rigger, square rigger. And it was just stunning. And anyway, we went back to the bar that afternoon, having beer and a shot of scotch, as they do
as you do in the Highlands,
as they do in the Highlands, and talking to this Scottish guy, and he wouldn't talk the American, because he's like, he's like, I talked to Australian, but he wouldn't talk to English, and he wouldn't talk to Americans. But because the Aussies were like, solid in the war.
It's incredible the Australian reputation abroad.
Yep.
There's certain places where like Bali and Thailand, it's like, oh no, here's another drunken Australian. But you go pretty much anywhere in the world, it's like, hey, an Aussie.
Yeah.
Generally going to be good for a smile and a laugh. So that got you onto a ship?
Well, I just had that eureka moment, like, the ship. That's the way to get around. And I literally ran out of the pub, and I ran down the wharf, and I asked to see the captain. And they said, what for? And I'd like to apply for a job. And they'd gone, well, there is no job. And I went, well, I'd like to offer an honest day's work for just food and a bunk. And they went, okay, come back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So I went and stayed in the youth hostel, then came back in the galley, and I had an interview with the captain and the purser, who was his wife. And I talked my way on the ship, and
you created a job.
I created a job. Yeah, I did. And then so anyway, they said, look, go, finish your trip. They had to do one more tour of the Mull of Kintyre. So I then went right around Scotland and Skye, and went hiking, and and up in the Highlands, and we went visiting castles, and so I had an incredible Highland adventure as well. And then this is a really big moment in my life, Ben, because I slipped it in back in this conversation when I wanted to know freedom, right? So I had in the back of my head this whole tour that I really wanted to know what true freedom felt like freedom from everything, like no keys, no job, no rules, no have to do anything, be anywhere at any time. I wanted to know what it would feel
Off
like.
the grid.
Yeah,
can't be found.
Yep. And to travel in any direction, and it doesn't make any difference, north, east, west, or south. And from that walk from the youth hostel to the end of the wharf was the moment that I got it.
How was that emotion like
the time? It was phenomenal because I knew that I had it.
Can you describe that traveling moment versus some of your media moments? I mean, very high emotive moments.
Yeah.
Very different experiences, but not many people can experience what it's like to, as you say, to have true freedom. How do you describe that?
Well, and I knew it was highly likely that I'd only give it once in my life, because once you get married, once you have kids, or once you have a job again, as soon as, once you've got an electricity bill, like once you're back on the grid, it's all over. I knew that once I put my foot on that ship, it was over, because then I was bound by the ship. I was bound by the rules, of where the ship was going and what I had to do.
Yeah.
It was back on. That moment of true freedom was only the walk in between, because I didn't have to get on the ship. I could have turned and gone the other way and jumped on a bus, or gone north and just hitchhiked wherever, and because I didn't have any keys, it just didn't make any difference.
You were bound by absolutely nothing.
For a short moment in a life. But I got it. I got it once in a lifetime.
Well done.
Yeah.
And that took you... Was you expecting to find yourself in New York?
No. Well, what happened then? The ship was then sailing across the Bay of Biscay, France, and then we went through the Gibraltar Strait to Malta, and then we worked on film. So the first one was Cutthroat Island with Rennie Harlan and Gina Davis, and so we were based in Malta for 5 weeks, shooting that film, and I paid an extra in that film, and that was great.
And this is where the radio career came in. So, well, there's a bit of media.
No, not really. I mean, I was just doing extra work at that point. But then what happened while we were in Malta, then this big limo pulls up, and we're like, whoa, who's this? And first of all, this gorgeous girl gets out. We're like, all right. But then a very distinguished gentleman comes out behind her. And like, all right.
Disappointed.
Yeah. And it's Ridley Scott. And we're like, whoa.
Mr. Gladiator.
Yes, Ridley. Ridley's like, whoa. And he's come and he's got out of the limo and he's looking at the ship, and we didn't know what was going on because they were keeping it quiet. But anyway, Ridley had chosen the ship to be the star of his next film, which was White Squall. But we had to be in the Caribbean, so we had to cross the Atlantic.
What was that ship doing? Sorry, like What was the purpose of that ship? What was it sailing to those different places?
It was a true story movie about a bunch of young guys, young kids that were on this training vessel. It's a pretty good film. And they were hit by a white squall, and the captain, is responsible for some deaths on the ship, etc. And then he's taken, to the maritime, courts.
And then Ridley Scott seen the ship and thought, that's it.
That's my star.
That's my one.
Yeah, so we had, all sorts of stars on there. Jeff Bridges played the lead in that one. John Savage.
Savage. Jeff Bridges is Mr. Big Lebowski.
Oh, of course, yeah.
John Savage is...
Yeah, well, he was nominated for an Academy for Deer Hunter. I mean, John's career is phenomenal. Amazing actor. And a lot of young actors. Ryan Philippe was a new up-and-coming in there. Scott Wolf, he was voted sexiest young man in the world by People magazine that year that we were there, because the magazine came out when we were on board. And I met Balthazar Getty. He was a young actor. He was in Judge Dredd, but he was from the Getty family, one of the wealthiest families on the planet, Getty Oil, and so we became quite good friends. And it was pretty cool to hang with all of these young actors on this film.
The previous year you're almost upside down in a helicopter at Kosciuszko.
Yeah.
Down the track, now you're bumping shoulders with some big Hollywood actors.
After crossing the Atlantic, it was a phenomenal trip. So we came out to the Canary Islands, and we crossed from the Canaries across the Atlantic, and I spent Christmas in the middle of the Atlantic. Rang my parents. Our captain gave us a 3-minute phone call on the satellite phone to ring home for Christmas, that year. So that was swapping over from 94 to 95. And then we were in the Caribbean then for quite some time, for many months, going up and down all of those islands, because we still had our charters to serve and also shoot the film as well. So,
wow.
And then from there, my deal was, and here we go, New York, finally. Then I wanted to keep going west, and the ship had to do the rough water scenes. We didn't get rough water in the Caribbean because it was in the off season then. So they were going back to they're going to South Africa or whatever. But me, I wanted to keep going west. So I got a deal that I jumped on the private jet with all of the actors in Bermuda. And, because that's where we'd sailed to through the, Bermuda Triangle. My son loves that story. And then got the jet to New York, and then it was game on. I was in New York and I was in America, and here we go.
What was the plan? You got to New York on a private jet?
Yes, I know. Crazy.
In style.
Oh, well, it went on further from that, because then everybody on the jet, they were all actors and they were loaded. So they were all staying at the Royalton, and I was cashed up because I did stunt work. Hang on a
minute. You're on a boat, and then you're just rubbing shoulders with actors, and they take you on a private jet to New York.
Yeah. And it had a big button. It was the Knicks private jet too. So they pulled out all the regular seats, and there was these huge
The Knicks,
seats.
like the New York Knicks.
Yeah, the basketball team. So they're giants, right?
Yeah.
So they've got huge seats. So we had these massive seats in the bar in the beginning, in the middle of the jet. So we're just standing in the bar, like drinking, cocktails with all the airline stewardesses.
Unbelievable.
It was phenomenal. And then it even got better, because then, the guys said, oh, we're going to the Royalton, and they were like, oh, it's pretty expensive, Gavin. I went, I'm cashed up. I just made 10 grand, sailing the world and working on 2 movies, and, I'm in New York. I'm with you guys. They were, righto, jump in the limo. So, we went to the Royalton, and it was just game on. It was just parties for the first 3 days with all these actors, and, because, David Lasher was with MTV at the time. So, and I watched the fireworks from an incredible party over the East River, and anyway, I had an amazing time. There's more to that story that I can't talk about, but
is it similar to Amsterdam stories you can't talk about?
Oh, there's so much to that story. That's a pub story with mates.
Oh, right.
But then I checked out of the Royalton, and it was about $800 a night, but I didn't care, And anyway,
the dream.
I went out, and there's a note, and I'll never forget it. And it was from Balthazar, and he just went, man, really cool to meet you. What an amazing time we had. Welcome to America. Enjoy your time here. And I just looked at it. She said, he picked up your tab.
Yeah.
And I was like, no way. So then I walked out, and I was still fully cashed up. And then going back to the story where I met Joe and Lance on the steps of Vienna train station a year earlier, I went out, rang him up, and said, I'm in New York.
You're a man of your word.
Yep, and I arrived.
Was that in the back of your mind? You think, not only am I going to meet you a year later in New York, on a private jet.
Yeah, I didn't think that would occur. Exactly. That was phenomenal. And then the next part of that story is that then I used to love walking the cities, and the maps were always, the same size, but the cities were really different. They were big. And so, like trying to walk Paris is difficult. It's huge. And so I had in my head that I was going to walk Broadway, and I got halfway down going, you got to be kidding me. This is a long way.
Subway.
Yeah, exactly. So I made a phone call. And I hung up the phone to ring up the mates that I had met. I was done with it. I was ringing up to see what they're doing. Like, you want to hang out? And I got off the phone, and the guy behind me said, "Oh, you're Australian?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I've spent some time in Australia." Anyway, we exchanged phone numbers, which again was very rare. And Jose said he never did this either. For some reason, he just kind of did it. And anyway, so as I was walking away, I'm thinking about his name. And then I remembered, when I was in year 3 at Our Lady of Lourdes at Taro, we had this kid come to our school, and the teacher wrote his name on the board and said, the J is pronounced as an H. That's why I remembered it so much. And I've always remembered it. And anyway, so I rang the number, and I said, "Jose, did you ever go to Our Lady of Lourdes at Taro?" And he said, I was a RAFie. My dad was in the RAF. And he said, I went to so many schools. And he said, "Is there a RAF base near there?" And I went, "Williamtown." And he went, "Yes." And I went, "Jose, you were in my class." Phenomenal story. And then so we met for lunch, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I'm studying acting." And I said, "Where at?" And he said, "Oh, the neighborhood playhouse." And I went, "Sandy Meisner?" And he went, "Yeah, how do you know Sandy Meisner?" And I pulled out the book that was in my backpack at the time. And I said, one of the actors on the movie that gave me this book on acting, Sandy Meisner, Neighborhood Playhouse. I said, "I'm reading the book." And he went, "No way." And
Is
he said,
that luck or divine intervention?
I don't know. But he said, "You want to meet the director?" So from lunch, we walked down to the school and met the director. And he said, "Mate, we've got an opening in the summer semester. Do you want to join us?" And I was like, "Yeah."
Saying yes to those moments.
Yep.
Where it can lead to.
And so I spent the summer in New York, and then things just kept happening. And
So 1 minute you're in Prague, just post the Cold War.
yeah.
Then all of a sudden you're in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Then you're in New York, and then all of a sudden you turn into acting. So
Yeah.
so are you thinking like, do I want to get back into media, or do I want to be like, because you've spent time on these films,
Yeah.
do I want to become an actor?
Yeah, and acting. My mum was an actress, when she was young, so I
Really?
had it in my
Yeah.
blood, and
Yeah,
always
yeah,
wanted. And I was already transitioning before I left. I was making the transition from radio to TV, and I was doing TV commercials here, and I had all these acting jobs that were here and doing acting classes. So it was already there. And now I'm in New York, and the possibility of going, with one of the most famous.
What were you aiming
schools.
for? Where was the goal? Where were you shooting?
At this point, it was just the
Like
experience.
to commercials, or were you trying to where were you trying to? Okay, I'm going to study acting.
Mm.
Do you want to be in movies? Do you want to be in TV show? What were
Yeah.
you? What were you
Yeah,
thinking?
I would have loved to have done, full-time movies. That was the goal,
Yep.
But during that time in New York, I did everything. I did student films. I did, Broadway, off Broadway. I did this improv stand-up group, that we go to cafes. I worked for shopping channel networks. I did everything,
With
just
an Australian accent?
on both, everything. I did Atlantic, English, did Australian. So I was whatever the job, whatever it took, to work and study my butt off.
Did you have the different types of American accents? Because New York has a different type of twang to other parts.
Australians find it really easy to do the Southern. The Southern accent is a lot, or Boston, so Boston is really quite English.
They don't roll the R's.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the Mid-Atlantic is the main one as an actor. It's called Mid-Atlantic. So it's kind of like this neutral accent. That's what most films are done in. So the Mid-Atlantic is the main accent that you need to learn as an actor. So that is the main one. And then obviously you've got all of your different, if it's Midwest or California, they're all different accents. You don't realize just how many accents there are.
That's it. Yeah.
So that, to do each role. So yeah, whatever it took, anything I could just to make a buck and get through. And then, I landed the ESPN job, which was really good.
How did you, so you're going from various different types of acting gigs.
Yeah.
How did you get the ESPN role?
My agent said, ESPN, what happened, ESPN was really getting big. It was going global. So then to localize, they were having, it was really amazing when you went to ESPN in Connecticut, upstate New York. But anyways, in the middle of nowhere. But you go down the hallway and there's like a soccer game going on, right? And you walk down the hallway and there's the French commentator, and then there's the Spanish commentator, and there's the English commentator. You just walk down the hall and you can hear all of the accents commentating the same soccer game. And now that one place is just going global. So our area was called Pac Rim, so it was right around the Pacific Rim. So my TV show for ESPN went to air here in Australia, but if you were going to Singapore, you'd see it there. If you went to New Zealand, you'd see it there. So 16 countries around the Pac Rim. So that was my TV show for ESPN, based out of New York, but broadcast back here, which was pretty cool.
Was that on your resume when you were applying for NBN? Or Channel 9? I'm not sure how that works. Is it Channel 9 or NBN?
It's a bit of both now. No, well, what happened then, and I landed some great shows, and things were changing a lot. And I had a new show then for USA Network. I had 2 new shows, so I had to leave New York.
The USA Network?
Yeah. So
what is that?
Oh, it's a big TV network. There's so many networks in America, so that was one of the major.
So it wasn't just like a local New York station. This is national.
Yeah.
United States.
Yep. And I wanted to move to California anyway. I was ready. So I was packing up. So I packed up New York, and it was on the Thursday. I had my big farewell and the big party there, and it was pretty funny. I had like Joe and Lance who was there. It was like, and how have you got so many friends here? You've got more friends here than I do, because again, throwing myself out there, I had an incredible life in New York. It was absolutely phenomenal, but it was time for a new challenge. So I was moving to California, and I had to keep going west, had to get home eventually,
This is part of the master plan.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like moving forward, 7 years, New York, and then keep going.
Exactly. And then I moved to California, and then I stayed with a friend, and then I found a place to live on the Saturday, and he's pretty much said, hey, look, make sure you always wear clothes to bed, keep a pair of flip-flops under the bed and a flashlight. And I'm like, why? And he's like, earthquakes. And I went, okay, right, yeah, of course, California. Sunday, believe it or not, I'm parked at a McDonald's drive-thru, and I'm looking at the car park, and there's this wave coming across the car park because next door was a big Target.
Wow.
And I'm like, what is that? And then, and then everyone in McDonald's is just bolted. They knew straight away. And I'm like, what is happening? I'm like, earthquake, And lo and behold, that was the Sunday. So I had an earthquake. And then Tuesday morning, I get a phone call, 6 o'clock in the morning, and my dad's ringing me up from Australia. And he's like, son, you need to go turn the TV on. And, I turned the TV on. Lo and behold, it was September 11. The towers were coming down. So I literally switched it on as the first tower was collapsing, and we were like, oh, my.
That is so tough.
My TV shows went on hold. We didn't know whether it was going to be World War III at that point.
Yeah.
So
everything went on hold.
Exactly.
Everything went on hold.
Changed my life too. It was over, really.
So you're in that moment. There was so much uncertainty in that period. No one knew whether to employ you, to fire, to grow, to
it was a
sell.
Scary time.
Yeah. So that really hurt you. I mean, if you had just say you're in New York and that happened, right?
Again, completely different. Yeah, I mean, it was really hard to talk to all of them. Well, I couldn't at first because, with the towers, as they came down, all the communication stopped. Like all of the mobiles, they were the main mobile towers up there, So it was very difficult to find. And I could see my friends who were news journos, I could see them running in the streets, So, they were covering the story, but at least I could see that they were alive. But Hallie, I knew she worked in the tower. And, I was really worried about Hallie, which was Joe's wife. She survived also, but I knew she worked down there. And Di, her boyfriend at the time, he was a firefighter. So I was connected to the whole thing, like watching, like not knowing who's alive and who isn't. So it was very close to my heart, and it was a very tumultuous time mentally, after that, because I didn't know what to do then. So I spoke to Qantas, and they said, oh, look, it's shut down, and there's no flights in or out. And then it was a number of days later, they said, hey, look, we've got flights out and there's availabilities. You want on? And I went, what else am I going to do? Couldn't go back to New York. The shows are on hold in LA. So I came back to Australia.
And then, one thing I found, I mean, I've spent years abroad, and it's such a challenge to return because you're constantly on a high.
Yeah.
You're on adventure, you're on like uncertainty, that freedom, you can go here, go there, and then you return back to home, what you're more familiar with, and then those, as you described, like those boundaries, those systems, you get back on the grid.
Yeah.
And I've seen this as so many travelers, it's really tough.
It was tough.
And you need to find that new jump, otherwise you go traveling again because that's what's normal and that feels right.
So true.
So how do you balance that out? So what do you do after an incredible journey.
Yeah, well, it wasn't easy. I'd never suffered depression. I didn't even know really, what it was, But then I found myself in a place and going, what is happening to me, And I realized, oh my, this is depression, and like it hit me, and I was like, whoa, and I was really, really shocked, but it was the whole, as you said, it was the come down of everything.
I've seen that so many times. It is. I'm not a doctor or a psychiatrist, but it is certainly elements, if not full-on depression.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
Yeah, it really is. And I got to know my monster, I guess, through that, and yeah, I guess live with it, but I and dealt with it, because like it exists. I kind of feel it probably exists in all of us in some kind of shape, form.
Well, you're a human being.
Yeah, all of us have got a shadow following us. You know what I mean? And I've always said that. I've got to keep an eye on the shadow. You know what I mean? Because it's Peter Pan. You can't have a Peter Pan lifestyle without a shadow that's trying to beat you down to a degree. And so I'm very much aware of mine now. And but that was again a part of growth. And
so what was your move? So you come back.
Yep.
Where you think, I might move to Melbourne.
Back to radio.
Back to radio. That was the calling.
Yeah, back to breakfess radio. So I got a breakfast radio gig.
Where did you do that?
Well, pretty much, where I began back at New FM. Well, I started, or was a part of New FM when it began here in Newcastle in 1989. So I came back then. To do the breakfast show, which was a disaster, and that didn't work. And then I went to talk radio, which I loved, and talk radio gave me then the foundation to do like the.
What was it a disaster? And what was one a failing? What was one a success?
It just didn't work. I mean, it just we just weren't both. I don't think we were both in great places at that particular time, you know. And it was just, and we just didn't kind of have the support or the direction, and it was just a bit of a lost cause. We thought we'd be able to pull it off, but we just didn't. We were just all over the shop, really, in hindsight, in every sense of the word, personally, professionally, it just, the stars weren't aligned, for that moment. So
that didn't work. And then what did?
Well, obviously starting to rebuild the acting, and coming back into that world. So I was then offered a contract back in Sydney. So I returned to Sydney. It was only 3 months. And then I was starting to move back into TV, and I was actually going to National Geographic Channel because of the travel and the experience. And I was going over there. There was a great TV show that was coming up, but I had a friend who was working at the Weather Channel, and she said, you should go to the Weather Channel. They really are looking for someone, and you'd be great for that. So I went over and auditioned and just smacked it out, and they literally said, you want to start Monday?
Did you say in your resume you don't have a meteorology degree?
Well, what happened? They wanted an audition, and they said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, can you just bring up a synoptic chart and maybe give me 3 minutes of that? Can you roll it out 3, 4, 5 days into the future? And they went, yeah, sure. So I just stood there and I said, what time? They said, can you do exactly 3 minutes? I said, yeah, just count me down.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call freestyling at its finest.
Yes,
3 minutes of, what do you want? 3 minutes?
Boom. Yeah, exactly. Because of doing commercials, I could time everything out and doing the improv. But also, at the end of it, they said, where did you get all of that information from? And I said, well, the charts. And they said, what, you can read charts? And I said, yeah. And they went, whoa. And I said, is that a rarity? And they went, at the time it was, because they were kind of like, they were experimenting. They were trying to find their ground, and how to progress forward, with the channel. But I was able to ad-lib, and then they checked it with the senior meteorologist, Richard Whittaker, and Dick checked it, and he went, he's spot on, and that's why they rang up and said, you're in.
Well done. So that was, what was that, National?
Yes.
National Weather Channel?
Foxtel, yeah. So,
Foxtel,
it was just, and it was great because then my partner at the time was pregnant, and I went, this is going to be good because it was
stability.
Yeah. Like doing acting jobs, you get a lot of money in a short period of time, but then you've got the big gaps, and it's frightening. And you can't raise a family like that. It's scary, because you're just like this, but the Weather Channel at the time, the money wasn't great, but it was linear. It was consistent, and I could work it out from there, and then I came up through the ranks and got better and better and better. And then
how did you do that? How do you go up the ranks at a Weather Channel?
Well, I guess my experience and my knowledge and enthusiasm and ability, and I helped change the Weather Channel then to go to more of an improv. Writing scripts out to me was a waste of time. I was wasting half the shift, writing scripts out when I could just like, let me in there, let me go. I can pump this out, and we can keep it updated and more current,
Yeah.
And then they said, oh, can you do you think you'd be able to train people to do that? So we put together this program, and we brought young trainees out, and we put them through a 6 to 8 week program and taught them how to do it this way. And it was kind of like a new beginning. And then I was just chasing weather events around the globe. And
how long are you in the gig doing this?
Oh wow, what was that? That was like 6 or 7 years, I think, something like that.
So what age were you?
Well, that was like from 2003, 2004 to 2009, so about 5 years, I guess. And then I was up in Brisbane, and I was chasing a big event up there, the Gap Storm, and we were feeding out from 9. And then Sammy Lucas has resigned from the Channel 9 weather gig up there, and we were feeding out. And I got a phone call at the hotel that night and said, "You interested in moving to Brisbane?" And I said, "Nah, look, I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not." But worked out fantastic, because lo and behold, Gary was interested, and he took the job from NBN. He may have been offered before, I don't know, but all I knew was like he took the job, and then the CEO from NBN said, "How do you feel about moving back to Newcastle?" And this was my hometown, and lo and behold, I had the chance to come home.
Love to talk to you about exactly that, because anyone from Newcastle will find that there's a high percentage of people in their 20s. I'm guilty of this. You're guilty of this. Newcastle can be a little bit of a bubble, and then people are like, I want to go see the rest of the world, or move to a bigger city and really expand on their horizons. But something magnetic about Newcastle is an opportunity to come back and like, yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it?
Well, look, as I said before, my life is about balance now. I understand me and what is right for me, and I'm a real believer that if the scales tip too much to one side, things become unbalanced. How often do you see people with really successful careers, but maybe the family life isn't great, or vice versa, or the business is, really, really good and they're obsessed and something falls off, To me, after traveling the world and seeing the world and flying backwards and forwards and, looking at what we have here, it's balanced here for me, and, I found a suburb that I can fly my paraglider in. I can go mountain biking in. I can surf in.
What suburb is this? The hill?
Merriweather. Yeah, of course, because you've got Glenrock Lagoon right there. You've got the cliffs. You've got the ocean baths. To me, it was like, and it was so central. You got 5 minutes into town. You've got, like Katara, Charlestown. It was like you draw a 15-minute circle around it, including beaches, Redhead, Dudley, Nobbies, Newcastle. It's like, wow, talk about balance.
This is a great interpretation for someone who's traveled the world, been to Amsterdam, spent a lot of time in New York, and still go, or Brisbane, or where were you in Sydney? As well. See, there's a lot of.
Lived in Melbourne too.
Podcasting over hours. There's so much to talk about. But yeah, for someone who's extremely well traveled and extremely well experienced to have that gauge, because I find that with Newcastle, but people's like, it's a bit of a bubble. If you grow up, but it's once you experience everything outside in the world, Newcastle's one of these amazing cities to be living in.
Yeah, well, look, I sold my 2-bedroom apartment in Sydney, and I had square meters of 100 square meters, and at the time I sold that in Sydney. And I bought 500 square meters in Merriweather, and I shaved like 70 grand off the mortgage at the time, and it was like, jackpot, I got in at a good time before it went absolutely gangbusters and crazy, I was quite lucky. It was like, the last house at that price, and never to be seen again. But I was lucky I came in by the skin of my teeth, and I got in, and, I've got balance in my life. And now, I've been able to work this job, and, I broadcast to all of New South Wales and on a national scale out of the studios here in Newcastle.
Actually, James, if it's all right, mate, got some footage of you doing a national, I don't know.
The chat room.
The chat room.
3 years, yeah.
Just seeing if you'd have some footage and be able to talk to it, because talk through it, but your enthusiasm, like you really are bound by it. I'm really excited to know where you could end up next year, the year after. Are you going to go backpacking? Are you going to be on national, consistent? I don't know. You have so many strings to your bow where you could go so many different directions. But could you talk us through this?
I loved this. This was phenomenal, and it came from my, I guess, that background of doing that talk radio, the opportunity to do this, and I think it was.
So this is a national news program.
Yeah, and so they just take different people, talent from all around the country, and we go on and talk about 4 different subjects that are the hot topic of the day, and it was just it was total freestyle. They just send you the topic and they didn't point me in. People said, "Oh, do they tell you to do this or that?"
There's no pilot.
Nothing
just,
whatsoever.
You turn up and deliver.
Yeah.
So you're in Newcastle and they're in their studios.
Yeah.
Okay.
They could be Sydney, they could be Perth, they could be Darwin, they could be anywhere. So it was really, and I got a great rapport with Amber. She was just great. So
Let's
really
have a
good.
look.
Poll numbers right, then it might stop Amber.
Gavin, the average person doesn't even really know Peter Dutton. It seems to be unfathomable. He could be our next PM. I mean,
Poll numbers right, then it might stop Amber.
Gavin, the average person doesn't even really know Peter Dutton. It seems to many it would be unfathomable he could be our next PM. I mean, is this system flawed? Should we maybe voting for the person, not just the party?
No, not at all. No.
100%, it is flawed, and Australians are 100% absolutely over it. Here's a message from your average Aussie to our current politicians and the political situation. We're over you. We're over your arrogance, your insipidness, your egos, and this in-house squabbling. You're carrying on like a bunch of children at a daycare centre. You're fighting over the sandpit when we want a sandcastle. And that sandcastle right now is in the form of a solution to the energy crisis. Now, come on. We sit on one of the world's largest natural deposits of coal. We've got natural gas. We've got more sunshine than a Hugh Jackman tap dancing routine. And we've got more wind than a hallway in Canberra. Now, come on, get it together. We're absolutely over you, and we're over this situation. We know we vote for a party and not a leader, so what does it take? From now on, should we change the law that once that leader is voted in from that political party that it cannot change during the term? I think we're going to have to go down that path because we are certainly...
I love it.
I was a bit upset that day.
Were they expecting you to go right and just go all in, all passionate, or they were just thinking, well, let's be all political here and let's not truly give our opinion? You like unleashed the dragon on that one.
Well, we were all over it, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Because that was, when we overthrew another prime minister. I mean, it was just, God, it was just absurd. It was truly ridiculous, wasn't it, And I was outspoken on it, and I had a point of view. It's what's the point of sitting on the fence?
That's a good point.
Maybe right, maybe wrong. I mean, but that's the beauty of a democracy, and our country and freedom. We've got a point of view, and they were crazy enough to give me a voice, a window to do that on national TV.
Is that why they reached out to you? Like, I know who can give some pretty out there thoughts or very passionate thoughts.
Yeah. They loved it. They were so supportive of me, and the letters that I've got from them are just beautiful.
Really?
Yeah, and the producers, they're just going, Gav, we love your passion, we love, your commitment to, something, like whatever it is, and it didn't matter. Like politics is like, I'm not a political reporter, but I'm an Australian with a point of view, and like I'm an average Aussie, and that's where I tried to come in from. It's like us out here, and tried to, I guess, speak for us, the average Joe. I'm not in the city, I'm not a high roller, I'm
Gav.
I'm Gav, and I got a point of view, and I kind of felt that it's a pretty average point of view, and I tried to express that. Of course, people are going to have, theirs as well, and the other side, maybe left, maybe right, but I honestly always just tried to come in from the average Australian's point of view. Nice. And I felt that on that particular day that was how we were all pretty much feeling. We were just over this, throw out another prime minister and get another one in.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're just exhausted by the infighting instead of just cracking on with it.
Yeah, and there was just so much that needs to be done. We have the potential to be the greatest country on earth here, and our politicians at that point, and still to a degree, they hold us back. Get over yourselves and get on with it.
Yeah. Run
this country and let us reach our potential. Give us a shot.
One thing that I find very amazing is what our little brothers are doing over in New Zealand, watching their current prime minister.
Oh, brilliant!
She is such a tremendous leader, and how she's going about things and how she's leading and what she's doing, really hoping that our politicians look at it and
But let's not forget, New Zealand,
take it on.
New Zealand was like the second country on the face of the earth to allow women to vote. They were one of the first countries that legalized gay marriage. The list goes on.
I think first female police officers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The list goes on. New Zealand is a cracking country.
Very, very progressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. The whole world can take a leaf from their book. They're doing an incredible job, and she's amazing. Love her. Big fan of her.
Oh, find it very, very entertaining watching you on national news like that. We'll love to talk to you more about, because we touched on about Newcastle, but I believe you spent a lot of time around the Hunter Valley.
Yes.
I think you've got some outstanding relationships with some of the vineyards there, but you're also a guest speaker. Do you doing a What happens there?
Yeah, well, I've hosted like the big wine shows up here, like which is fantastic. My cousins, have worked in the vineyards. My other cousins have built, some of the infrastructure for some of the vineyards. I'm connected to, the Margans estate, and Andrew was a phenomenal winemaker with Tyrrells. And through all of this, I've been able to acquire a bit of knowledge. My dad, going all the way back, Dad used to ride his bike up and down Mountain View. He was from Cessnock, so
a motorbike or a mountain bike?
No, he's like road bike, like Tour de France style.
Mountain View. I was thinking of a Brokeback.
Yeah,
not the movie Broken Back Mountain. broke the ridge.
Yes,
where the Hunter Valley really, where the rainfall comes through, really filters down the vines.
Love it. I love my wine, and our Semillon is the best in the world, and I know where to get it, and it's on that side of the river, off that Broken Back range now because of the soil and everything, and Tyrrell's got like some of the oldest vines there, over 130 years old now, and I big supporter of our industry here, and it's beautiful and it's stunning. Look, I'm a supporter too of the wine industry because of work and jobs and what it's done, for wealth, and it is the backbone of, this country, and we rely on it in so many different ways, but it also hurts us, as far as I've flown over those craters and it hurts, horse studs, being replaced, potential vineyards or farmland, it's, again, we need balance here, it's a very difficult subject, and it's a very touchy one as well. But I've got friends, I have family who are miners, and their families rely on it, and it supports economies, but at the same point, we can't destroy our planet over it as well.
On my previous podcast, I had the Lord Mayor Nuatali, and we spoke about this quite a lot, about like the coal impacts, and I was asking, there's got to be another way. In my opinion, there must be 10,000 ways of generating jobs, and mining coal is one of them, but at the moment, the economy that it's generating, you can't ignore that.
Yeah,
it's really tough.
Yeah.
It's this huge powerhouse. You can't just switch off overnight.
Yep.
You got to have a long-term plan. And tourism around Newcastle, I've really found, is really hurt by that. Not so much around the vineyards. Well, or even so, like we're talking about the big mining areas around there. If you go on like Google Maps or Google Earth and you look at geographically where the Hunter Valley is and where these open cut mines are, it's really, really close.
Yeah, I've flown over them in my glider.
Yeah.
So I've been really, really close to them,
Yeah.
So, and flown through the valley, and, you hit little pockets of the valley, and it's just so visually stunning. And we've got one of the oldest temperate rainforests in the form of the Barringtons and the Wattigans, although they're being burning and we're losing them at the moment. But, they'll grow back, they'll come back. But there are some areas, these rainforest areas that are so old and never burned because they've been wet, we're losing them. But, visually spectacular. But again, balance. That's not an easy solution, that one. And obviously I'm not running this country. I don't have the solution to it. But there needs to be something done as far as, change is concerned. That, we don't want to lose our economy, we don't lose jobs and et cetera, but we need balance to try and look after the planet a lot better.
Very much. So a few more things I'd like to talk about before we start to wrap this up. But certainly some of your best moments I've really found, because I've done my homework, and because you have so many things in your career that you've accomplished. But in my personal opinion, none other, if we could just possibly bring this one up.
What's this one?
Well, you've done some DJing. Right, so you've ticked off so many things in your career, and around Newcastle, you're on TV every night. Everyone from Newcastle is very familiar with who you are. You're like a local celebrity around here. Now, I think this happened pretty recently at the Cambridge Hotel. So it's a hotspot of Newcastle. This hotel and pubs gets big bands when they're touring Australia. They always play the Cambridge, and there's a room which can hold 1,000 people in there.
Yeah.
So I believe we got some footage
of cutting loose, going back to my grassroots. Oh, look, well, there's all sorts.
Are we able to... So this is you, mate. So you're doing a DJ set again.
Yeah, this one is crazy. So it is all chords. like rehashing the skills. Yeah, it was funny, man. That was it was yeah. As I said, we raised some really good money. That was an awesome audience. They came with enthusiasm all over them. So I had to deliver, mate. I had to go at next level. So that was a lot of fun. But that was for Sam. He was doing Dancing with the Stars, and he asked me to revisit, one of the old things that I used to do. I used to be a guest DJ, in the town. I used to get off the air and get the night going. I'd just do a half an hour, 40-minute DJ set and rev the crowd up, and then it was game on. So he said, "You want to come back and revisit that?" And I went, "Yeah, I'm in."
All right, we want to finish up, but before we do that, I'd like to request if you can give your best travel advice or best tips advice, either that can be going backpacking or around Newcastle, around the Hunter Valley. If you had to give some recommendations or travel advice or tips, tricks or hacks, tourism-wise, Australia, globally, or Newcastle, what would they be? What can Gav suggest?
I believe that travel is at another level if you're going with a mission. The biggest one for me was flying off Kilimanjaro. So I'm going back to Tanzania, going back to Africa and a part of, Tanzania that, I hadn't been before. And you can go and walk and climb Kilimanjaro, and that's an incredible challenge. And that's a mission, So then you go and do a tour and you can do a safari afterwards, To me, if you're just going to do a safari and live in a resort or stay in a resort, it's good. It's not a bad holiday.
There's holidaying and then there's adventure and there's travel.
And then, taking it to another level. So flying off Kilimanjaro, which I attempted to do in 2013, the winds were too strong. And again, we were raising money. We built schools over there. We were able to get water into communities for the Maasai that, had never seen clear water. Seeing the look on children's eyes when clear water comes out of a pipe in the ground, it's like,
Yeah.
I mean, we've got Christmas, coming up here. Children, they're wide-eyed looking at presents under a tree. Seeing a child's eyes ignite because there's clear water coming out of a tap is probably one of the most rewarding things I've ever seen in my life. So that is a mission. So, I returned in 2016 and was able to then finally fly from the summit of Kilimanjaro. So not only have I had this incredible travel experience, and then in 2013 I did the flying safari and did the normal safari that everybody did. And look, after I'd been traveling around looking elephants and giraffe and everything, I fell asleep in the truck, put it that way. You know what I mean? It's good, it's nice, and that's what normal people do. But for me, it's the experience. When I went to Bali, we stayed in a resort. But when I went to Bali, I went there with a mission to get my tandem paragliding license. So I accomplished something in the process. When I went back to Europe as a paragliding pilot, I wanted to fly off the highest peak in Germany. I wanted to fly Stilbai Valley.
So I guess in essence, it's about finding your own personal limitations.
Yeah.
And just going that bit beyond that.
Yeah.
So in your case, you're a mega super high adventurous, high energy, super positive person.
Mm.
And your personal limit is to go, I got to do it off Kilimanjaro.
Yeah.
I need to go next level. But no matter what your boundary is, so I guess it could be to go find where your personal boundary is, where you're comfortable with, and just that mission could be just
beyond.
Just push beyond.
Yeah, because it's just highly rewarding. To me, an extreme holiday is the person that's sitting, by the pool reading a goddamn book every single day, and I walk past them going, whoa. But they may need that. Maybe they've got a really stressful life or whatever, and they've got to sit there. But for me, I couldn't do that.
That is their mission.
Yeah. I want to read the book on the plane going, I'm going to burn that time, on the plane reading a book. I'm not going to waste my time, I want to do something. I want to accomplish something. That's me, though. Not everybody for me. But to me, it's then heightened.
Just to find that. So many people, I guess, will go on a holiday just to escape and have a break.
Yeah.
So while you're doing that, if you can find something within yourself to go, I want to discover more about animals.
Yeah.
I want to discover more about food.
Yeah.
I want to discover more about culture.
Yeah.
To push beyond that and to say yes in those moments, and then you can get more out of that experience.
100%. I believe so. I mean, even if it's just like, I'm going to go Italy and I want to cruise Tuscany, do a cooking class. Come back bring something back other than a painting or a postcard or a piece of clothing. bring back a skill.
Say yes to things.
Yeah, exactly.
You are definitely a yes man.
Yeah, 100%. And then you've had the holiday, and then you've done everything that everybody else would normally do, but then you've got something a little more, and you carry that with you. Like, I don't have much. In my house, it's minimalistic stuff, but I've got cupboards full of photos in the old days, and I've got photos in my computer now, etc. That's what I've got. And what's up here more so, because I've stuffed up, I've lost photos, but it's what I carry with me, because all of the other stuff, I can't take that to the grave, but I can take this to the grave. It may dissolve and there'll be nothing there, but it's coming to the grave with me.
Exactly. Your money's not going to follow you afterwards,
100%.
is it? But yeah. Well, Gav, I really do appreciate you taking your very busy schedule to come down here and do this podcast. Mate, you're an inspirational bloke. Chatting with you before and even after, in the past, like, mate, like you're the real deal stuff. Like, some
Thanks,
people
man.
might turn things on to the camera and go, going to be on the camera and then deliver something. You are so much high energy and so much full of positivity. It's absolutely incredible, and you've achieved so much, and you set a benchmark quite high for people to follow. So, really, thank you for coming down and spending time with me on Walter Tours podcast.
Oh, mate, thanks for having me, Ben. It's been a pleasure. It's been an hour or so of therapy.
My pleasure. Thank you
Cheers,
so much.
my man.